Hi everyone, welcome back to Kann Farms. Last episode we had just finished up a bunch of farm chores and we're getting ready for our sugar harvest. This is an exciting time for us. It's one of our biggest harvests. It definitely takes us the longest. But we've got a pretty good setup here. We use 2 tractors and the single harvester, and it takes us about an hour and a half of real-world time. The reason we use this setup is that it's cheap to get started. The harvester itself isn't too expensive. We got both of these trailers off of the used market. Our first season we actually just used one harvester, and the second season we added another. If you've been following along since the beginning, you'll note that this field we're harvesting now is actually the second field we planted sugarcane on. The first field was a fair bit smaller, so it made it okay with just the one harvester, but the size of this field really requires us to have 2, otherwise we'd be here for hours. It's not a fast harvest. The harvester only actually takes out 1 row at a time. On the plus side, you really don't need much sugarcane compared to other crops to fill the production facility. Our harvest is actually going to more than fill it. We have a silo for all of the leftovers. The problem with sugarcane is that even though it regrows year after year, you do suffer a penalty for not plowing between harvests. And I don't want to plow between harvests because then you have to plant it all over again, and it really cuts into the profits and really takes a lot of time. So I have a field that's bigger than we require planted, so I never have to touch it again. It acts a lot like grapes and olives in that way. With it being such a slow process, there are going to be a lot of fast forwards in this episode. I'm going to be trying out something a little bit new. I'm going to be adding some music in between some of these sections, but I will spend a fair bit of time talking about what I'm doing. For instance, at the start here, I get both tractors working the short way. And the reason I do that is that the computer does not turn around very sharp, which makes sense. You have a trailer tucked behind the harvester, you will get caught, and the turning doesn't, it's not easy. So you do have to get a little bit of a hedgerow done, and by hedgerow I mean multiple rows, because it's a narrow harvest. On this side, I actually have to do the first row manually. The trees are a little bit too close for comfort for the AI, but after I get this first row done, everything is good. I do utilize the AI a lot. And the reason I do that is I don't want to damage the crop. I do have narrow tires on both tractors, so you can enter and start and not damage anything, but the trailer is the big thing that, if you're not careful, can lose you a bit of yield. With the AI doing it, you don't lose anything. And even when I do rows and chunks on my own, I don't lose a lot of product, but I lose some. I do end up damaging some of the crop. It's not a lot of loss, but I just don't like losing anything. Again, we produce much more than we need, so for the sake of saving a couple of minutes, I definitely understand manually running one of the tractors at a time. They fill up so quickly, though, that you do end up switching between the 2 to drop off your sugarcane, which is why I tend to just let the AI go. I'll follow one for a little while and then just switch to manually controlling the tractor when it's time to run to the mill. As far as the pattern goes, I will do 2 trailer loads on each side, going the short direction, and then I will switch to the length of the field. Going the length is faster because you turn less frequently, And I found 2 trailer loads gives you plenty of room for the tractors and trailers to turn around in. I really enjoy this harvest. I know a lot of people find it to be tedious, but I don't find it to be worse than others. I know a field this size would be a very, very quick task for most other crops, but I compare this field to a large barley field. If you compare this to a field that would completely fill the grain mill, for instance, it might even be quicker than barley or other crops. So the yield you get for this product makes it worth the time investment. The other nice part about it is you can get into sugar early. Like I was saying earlier, the equipment is not super expensive. And because you don't need a lot of land to produce the yields to fill a mill, it's a great starting crop. I don't recommend it for everyone. The best starting crop is probably grass, and it's quicker, and you will make more money. I make probably $75,000 to $80,000 a year harvesting sugarcane, and I make somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000 a year selling silage. The catch, though, is that even though a single cut and baling session is shorter than the sugarcane harvest, you have to do it 3 or 4 times a year. So the overall time spent in a year on silage is a lot more than the sugarcane. This year's sugarcane harvest was particularly good. The yields this year were better than last year. To be honest, I'm not sure why we did everything exactly the same. But we're already filling up our silo, and that means our grain mill is completely full. And the grain mill holds more sugarcane than it will produce sugar with, so you're left with extras into the next years. From now on, nothing else is really going to change. We're just going to be dropping everything off into the silo instead of the mill. So I'm going to turn on a little tune and let's just enjoy the rest of the harvest. Just cleaning up the last little bits. We'll drop this off in the silo. And actually, I'm pretty sure that we are going to completely fill our silo. This silo is a mod. I picked it up because I couldn't find any in-game silos that would store sugarcane. But it's not a very big one. It holds 300,000 liters, which, to be fair, is more than a year's worth of sugarcane. Hopefully we can drop this last little bit back into the mill. It is processing constantly, so there should be a little room. I mentioned this in a previous episode as well, but the sugar mill produces sugar at an extremely fast rate. It also stores sugar in large quantities, so it's a really, really easy production facility to manage. If you have a little skid steer there to shuffle things every once in a while, or in my case I have the auto-loading semi there most of the time, you don't really have to push product out of the way often. It stores something like 50,000 liters, maybe more, maybe a little less. I'd have to check, but it's a lot. Which it needs to, considering how many cycles the mill goes through in a month. I think it's something like 1,200, and it's a 2-to-1 ratio, so every 2 sugar cane turns into sugar. So you're getting, I guess I'd have to do the math to find out how many pallets, but you're getting a lot of pallets of sugar. Sugar itself still doesn't sell for a lot, so just like the sugar cane, you make your money by quantity. You're not selling them like soybeans, where soybeans you may not get as much yield, but there's a very high selling point, and you make your money by storing it. Sugarcane is something that I mentioned previously. You have about 6 months of the year you can sell it, and it's within a good range for the top price. It's just a nice, consistent sell. It's something that you could probably set to auto sell, but with your profits being kind of small on it as is for the time invested, I think it's worth manually bringing it to the sell points. All we have left to do in the field is tidy up and then lime it so it's ready for next year. Oftentimes I will run the lime and then I will also fertilize right away. But this is our 3rd harvest of sugar from this field, and from the tooltips I think it might not regrow, so I'm not going to fertilize the field until next year if some of the sprouts pop up. I'm going to sort of take this as a chance to experiment, especially with the silo being full. We have an extra year's worth of sugarcane stored, so next year's harvest is not going to be as important. Just like when I harvest, I'm going to run a hedgerow here with the liming trailer, and then I'm going to let the AI do this field. The reason I do that is mainly because it's difficult to see. You're always left with the remnants of the sugarcane on the ground, and I can use the mini-map, and I do for these hedgerows, but it's just difficult to make sure that you get everything done. It's easier with the fertilizer. I guess the color difference is much more drastic. The sugarcane will take all the fertilizer you have, and it requires a large amount to make sure that it's good to go. So you're going from that red screen to the bright greens. And with the lime, you're going from light green to slightly less light green in some cases, maybe blue, but it's just not as easy. And when the AI just knows exactly where to put everything, I'm going to take advantage of it. Sometimes they're not the greatest workers, but sometimes they're better than I could ever be. So we'll let them take advantage of their strengths. I know this is a little bit shorter of an episode, but I don't want to take away from the harvest by adding a couple more chores at the end. So thanks for joining us today on Kann Farms, and I hope to see you next time.